Hey babes, you saw the title of this video and you clicked on it and you're probably wondering, how do you save $52,000 a year? And I got the answer for you. It's just 2 steps. 1 is get a high paying job, and 2 is just don't spend money. So thank you very much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe. Hi, hello, welcome to the Casual Comments, where we are all common people casually just being good at finances. Let's be honest. Like, if you searched for this video, if you looked up this video, if you were recommended this video, you know something about finance. So let's not kid ourselves here. As the title says, this year I saved $52,000. I did like a mid-year video outlining what happened since beginning of the year to maybe like summer-ish, because I think that chunk of time was when I was like either paying low rent or paying no rent because I got a good deal on this apartment. And then this, I guess, like second half or like full annual review is what I felt like after having to pay rent, which I will say it now, it's not that bad. And that's mostly because I did get a bonus. I also did get a pay raise. So maybe we start with that first. Got a pay raise. I got like a 23% raise. I'm not gonna tell you the amount because, you know, I don't know who's on here. If you watched my past videos, you would know that I'm making 6 figures. So pick a random number in the low 6 figures or low 100,000 category and just add 23% to it. And that's what I'm making. So basically my living costs have increased by $1,000, which is insane. Like, yes, that is lifestyle inflation, but also like, I really like this apartment. And you know, I'm decorating my own room with like semi-permanent expensive stuff, these lights, for the first time in my life. So I don't know, it really feels good to be comfortable in my own living space for once. So really enjoy it, and I think it's like worth it. Also, there's a gym now, and I actually go to the gym for mental health, for physical health. Adding an extra $1,000 a month, just like, it's not that big of a deal for me at least. So we have that. And I think something I want to note too is like, with this apartment, I feel like I finally achieved what I came to New York City for. So if I have to leave soon or within like the next couple of years, which, you know, I'm thinking about it, it's okay because I'm like living my floor to ceiling window New York City dream, at least for 1 year. Maybe I'll re-sign this apartment for a second year. So I feel ready to close New York City if, you know, it needs to be. So I guess let me give some color into kind of how my monthly expenses played into this. So generally my cost of living, or just like expenses outside of like rent and like living costs, are like $1,000 to $1,250. So that's like food, fun, maybe like groceries, internet. Basically that's it. I really don't do anything. I haven't traveled. I haven't done all that. So my cost of living for New York City under the pandemic or during the pandemic is around $1,000, $1,250. And my old rent was like $1,500. So basically like each month I had, if you calculated it all, I had like an extra $1,000, which would always go towards saving up for something, or I put it into like my brokerage account and invest with it. But since moving here and like having to pay rent, that extra $1,000 is now like rent money, and like I don't contribute to my brokerage anymore. But with this raise that I just mentioned, it kind of sets me back to the current like standard of living, or like, I don't know, cost of living that I had with the cheaper apartment. So in my mind, it's like lifestyle inflation never happened. You know what I mean? Like, with this new salary that I'm getting, I'm basically able to save the same amount as if I were living in a cheaper apartment, which works itself out in my head. And also, like, I want to note too that like my goals for like financial for the year was just to max out my 401k and my Roth IRA. And I've been able to add more to my brokerage. I've also been able to do the mega backdoor Roth, and I think I put around like $7,000 into it. And like with December, I'll be able to push like maybe $10,000, $11,000 in total, because this month I'm putting like $2,000 something per paycheck into my after tax so that I can push it to my Roth IRA before, you know, that all disappears. That's the plan. That's a goal. I've basically surpassed all of my like financial goals for the year. So I don't feel too bad about spending rent money. Although, you know, when I see them take it out of my bank account, it like kind of hurts. But then like I look at my view and I'm just like, I don't care. I literally don't care. So, oh, and like I'm also on the FIRE journey. So financial independence, retire early journey. I think my mindset is like, I'm very happy about my accomplishments and I still will work towards them. But unfortunately, I don't think I will be done at like the $2 million mark, which is when people like say like you have enough money to live forever essentially. And that's being because like my parents do not have retirement savings that are dependable. Like my mom says, okay, she has social security, like I don't have to take care of her, but like I don't trust that bitch. Do you know how expensive it is to be old? I don't think I'm gonna hit the $2 million mark, but that will not stop me from like trying to save as much as I can, even though I know it's like a little futile just because like I have to work extra to like support my parents. So if you are watching and you have children, make sure you save money and do not become a burden on them. The final note that I wrote down says, I no longer care about like the daily swings, which is very true. There was a point in just like being obsessed with like my personal finance that I would kind of just look every day and be like, oh, like this is red, this is green. I never really like cared just because I knew that my investments were long term, but I would still look, you know what I mean? But now I literally don't log into my bank accounts, my brokerage, my 401k unless I'm transferring funds. I think like this is what we call like the boring middle where, you know, I'm set in terms of short-term finances. I have an emergency fund to take care of me for 6 months if needed. I'm coasting. I think I mentioned that in the last video, but I'm coasting technically. So if I no longer invest until I'm 65, my current investments now will equate to $2 million in the future when I'm 65. So I like technically no longer need to save for retirement because I'm set. So I think like with that all in mind, I'm no longer like obsessive over my personal finance and my like numbers day to day. And like now, like I go through like, you know, 4-figure swings maybe within a day. You would think that, oh, that's like a large amount of money that, you know, you would kind of like care about it or you'd want to investigate like why it's doing this. But like at this point, it is what it is. Money is fake anyway, but like the market is even more fake. So we'll just let the investment sit and okay, so those are all the bullets I wrote down. I want to go back to kind of the goals I listed out in the 2020 video. So I'm reading off the thing right now, so sorry if I'm not looking at you. I know you're there, you're beautiful. Like I want to stare at you all day, but I have my notes I need to look at if you want this information. So please excuse me. Financial goals, 401k, I should max. So I did that. I maxed out my Roth IRA. I hit 6 figures in net worth, and I made a video about that in like March. So maintain $20,000 in cash, which perfect. And that's not because I want to make a note, like that's not because like I was struggling to maintain $20,000. It's because I was like saving more money than I should have, which, you know, maybe I should say if one were to save more than 6 months worth of expenses in like cash or in like a high yield savings account, which really isn't high yields, one would be missing on the opportunity cost for the market to get some interest. So that was kind of just like a ceiling for me, you know, like I shouldn't be storing more cash than I really need because that's just not optimal for investing. Another thing I wrote down was like dividend investing, which I think I'm going to revise for myself. Like I think like around like $1,000 or whatever in a dividend ETF. And I no longer recommend it for friends because it's in my brokerage. And while like it is like steady dividend and everything, it just consists, it consists of basically, you know, an S&P 500 market. Like they just pick stocks within the S&P 500, like large companies that will pay dividends. But 2, I think is the more important part, because the dividend ETF is in my brokerage account, I will get taxed on the dividends as income basically. So that's not really optimal for saving in terms of like tax and being like tax advantaged. So I think I won't be selling off what I have now just because, you know, it's fun to see like some money flow in and like I don't mind the taxes on that. But in terms of like making my portfolio around that, it's a no-go. I think like what I have now is going to stay at that. Another financial goal was to maintain a 40% savings rate, which I think I did. And we'll talk about that after we get into my self-investment goals. So 1 was traveling. And we thought Hot Girl Summer was going to be here. Hot girls, we had problems too. But as you know, during the summer, the Delta variant made its debut and now we have the Omicron variant. And, you know, places are not fun to travel to like solo. So it didn't make sense for me to like buy a plane ticket. It is what it is. My next goal was about youth and like having fun. And I think I did some of that during the summer. Like I went to eat with friends, like hung out, got drinks, tried to like get into like a bar or club, whatever, to like pop our booties. But it's so fucking packed. It's like not even fun anymore. So you know what? Like I will accept the fact that I'm old now and I do not enjoy being in tight crowded spaces with alcohol. No. And then the last one was a gaming PC. As you may know, and as you may have subscribed from that video, that's like my only video that like popped off. Essentially, it only has like a couple thousand views, but I did get a gaming PC and like I feel, so like I go through like a phase of gaming and content creation. And I think that's like, it's just really healthy for me being able to like occupy my time after work or like outside of work with things I actually really enjoy. So like that was a baller investment. And I would highly recommend if you're on the fence of like, oh, should I get like a gaming PC? Should I get like a new PC that I can like make stuff on or like play games on? I say yes. I'm having the best time of my life. It saves me money and like it saves me hangovers. Like I don't have to go out and get drunk. Like I much prefer just like staying in and playing video games. So it worked out for me. All right, final part of this video will just be kind of how my finances are structured and like how what led me to being able to save $52,000. So let me just break down my investments this year and kind of like list out, maybe I'll like put like a little thingy right here or whatever, but how I save money and like how it all adds up to $52K. First and foremost, the most important thing was I put $6,000 into my Roth IRA pretty much like the first month I was able to. I maxed out my 401k and that's $19.5K, so $19,500. And then in my after tax, I currently have like 7.2, but with December, it's an additional 4.6. So I'll do the math. It's like 11-ish, whatever, something here. I'll put it here. And then in my individual brokerage, I went back and like looked at like all the money that I transferred in. I put in $7.7 thousand, which was more than I actually thought. And it was all during kind of like the first half of 2021. So I was doing pretty good. I also have $7,000 in company stock, which I generally wouldn't recommend, but I think in my case, it like makes sense. So one is I got it from my employer's like employee share purchasing program where like I could buy my company stock for a 15% discount if I basically like just let them like hold on to my cash for 6 months and then they'll buy it for me and they'll be like, okay, like a share is like $100, so you get 15% off. So you actually bought however many shares at $85, which is great. I think it's a great thing. If you have the opportunity, I think you really should look into it. It literally is the most free money there is. There's no investment that you can guarantee 15% within 6 months or within a year or however long your employee like period for like putting money into it is. So highly recommend you put in money even before investing, but then you take that money and then invest it after you get it. So there's that. Usually I would sell off my stock and like invest it or like put it towards something, but now in 2021, like I don't need that money to invest. Like I don't feel like I need to sell off the stock. So I'm holding onto the stock because one, I'm holding onto it until it becomes kind of like a long-term investment, then I'll sell it. So it reduces like the tax burden on me a little bit and like I can afford to hold on to it. So I don't mind. And then two is because I work for a publicly traded company, a lot of the profits and benefits are passed to the shareholder, right? So my bonus this year, lovely, but it was 4 figures, whereas people like in private companies are making 5 figures. And if you're like, up there, you're making 6 figures and like bonuses, like it's a lot of money. But for me, it was like a mere like $4,000. By holding onto that stock, I'm basically I'm getting a bonus for myself. You know what I mean? Because the company is passing on benefits to the shareholder and now I am a shareholder, I'm getting those benefits. So basically because my bonus was kind of shit, I'm holding onto the stock in an effort to get a bonus, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. I think all of that will add up to like $52,000-ish, and part of it is from like a discount with my stock purchase, but I don't want to figure out the math for that. We'll just say $52,000. The next thing I want to talk about is basically like how quick investments like add up. What I mean by that is it took me 3 years starting from like -10, ish net worth to hit $100,000 net worth. I was kind of doing the math and like if I were to stay on like the same savings path, it would only take me a year from basically when I hit $100,000 to reach $200,000. So the time that it'll take me to get from 100 to 200K is a fraction of it. It's like a third, which I think is insane. I do want to note though that people are like, okay, it's all about like compound interest, blah, blah, blah. But like, I think early on in your career or when you're saving, it's really more about savings rate, or I guess like 2 things, right? One is better income. And I've gotten raises over the years, and like being able to save $50,000 on a 100K salary is a lot easier than trying to save that much on an 85K $100K salary, which is what I started off with when I graduated college. And also I think like when you're first starting out with like saving and like personal finance, you're taking care of other things. Like you have debt, you need to build an emergency fund, so you can't really invest, right? So there is no compound interest. Like if anything, compound interest is working against you because of debt, because of opportunity cost. So I think it just gets easier, not because of like the 100K that like I saved, but because of like my raises, you know? And then final point, let's break down my investments. Like I kind of want to not show you exactly like what I'm invested in or like how much I have in each thing, but I want to, as a percentage, kind of just give you an idea of where I am putting my money, just so it's a bit more, you can like see it, you know what I mean? So I think at a high level, 94% of my investments are safe. And when I say safe, I'm all 100% in equities. I have no bonds, no certificate of deposit, nothing like safe. 100% in equities, which, you know, to most people is risky. But when I say like 94% safe investments, it's wide market ETFs. So S&P 500 ETFs, total market ETFs, total international market ETFs. So essentially, I think at this point, any publicly traded company on basically this planet or like in countries that I'm able to buy from or that Vanguard or Fidelity or whatever invests in, like I also technically own a portion, you know what I mean? ETFs are where 94% of my money sits, and that is the plan moving forward. So the other 6%, this year I decided to be a bit more adventurous in where I invested. This may not be like adventurous to like anyone at all except me. When I say like adventurous, there's only one individual stock that I own, and it's like my own company. And I do it for the reasons I mentioned earlier in this video. The rest of the 6% are all in different ETFs that I find adventurous or that are not total market. So I think one good example is iClean. It's like a green energy fund that compiles a lot of like different green energy companies into a fund. I think it also does like some sort of like cash or like some other like way of making it safer, but essentially it's like a green energy ETF. And honestly, I think over the past like year or two or three, over the past 2 years that I've owned it, it really hasn't performed that well, but I think it's more of a long-term investment for me. I truly believe green energy is the future. Like it has to be, otherwise we all die out, and like hallelujah, that's great too, but you know, we have to switch to green energy soon as a society. So that's where kind of like my mindset of betting on iClean will come from. The next ETF that I think is like a bit more adventurous and kind of fun is MSOS, which is a marijuana ETF. I was doing research, I really forgot what this one is, but there were a few different ETFs that like catered to marijuana, and I think some of them were in Canada, some of them were in the US. I think MSOS is fully US, and the reason people like it rather than the other marijuana ETFs is US regulations are kind of still being like figured out. What we've already seen from the Canada regulations or the Canadian regulations is they're pretty strict. So a lot of the funds or a lot of the marijuana funds or companies up there aren't doing too well because of the strict regulations. Whereas with the US, because it depends on different states, at this point, it's a bit more of like a bet. And like people think that they'll be less strict when it comes to marijuana just because of the states that are already legal and like kind of operating with that kind of regulation in place. Again, I don't know where this is going to go, but I do see a near future where marijuana will be legalized and regulated. And I think a lot of companies will, you know, pop up and I think do well. So that's where my bet is. Does it make sense? No, but I think it's fun, you know? I think one thing too that's like missing from this adventurous category is Bitcoin or like crypto in general. Let me just put this out there. I think if I were to invest in crypto, it would just be Bitcoin. Like to me, all of the different cryptos just don't be making sense. Like there's no use case for them just yet. They're not backed by anything. People can say that like, oh, like it's traceable or whatever, but you know, if you have like a wallet ID, like you can see where like, you know, funds go. So untraceable my ass, but also like big companies are investing in crypto as a portion of their investments because I own them. I technically do own crypto. You know what I mean? I think it's just crypto right now. It's just too volatile for me to really believe in it at this stage. So I think I'm just going to invest in wide market ETFs and like call it a day. All right. I think that's it. I think usually I would like have a goal section where I list out like what I want to achieve in the next year. But I feel like it's just all the same things, right? So max out my retirement accounts, put as much money as I can away, invest in myself, and call it a year, you know? So I don't think it's valuable to add that into this video. So I think we'll end it there just because the recording's getting a bit long too. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. I would love to get ad money on this channel and, you know, get some side income and talk more about money and upgrade my camera and little studio going on here. Subscribe, come back, let me know how you did this year in terms of personal finance, or like what you would change about like my situation. You know, like I'm always looking for tips. Like if people want to come here and critique me, like let me know, like give me free advice, you know, so I don't have to talk to like a financial advisor and like pay buttloads of money for bad advice when you could just be giving me bad advice, you know? All right, thanks for watching, babes. Bye.